I sprint inside the spaceship, almost tripping over as I hurriedly situate in the captain's seat. With hands trembling, I stretch out to grasp the controls. The ship obeys and rumbles with a symphony of power, propelling me away from this nightmarish planet. A mere day ago, our group consisted of 6 members as we touched down on the enigmatic planet Nova. Our primary objective was to recover a highly classified asset from a wreckage site belonging to an unmanned spacecraft. Although we had prior experience navigating Nova's uncharted regions through several terraforming projects, none of our past endeavors had been shrouded in as much secrecy as this one. This was different, we were told. Different indeed, as things went south pretty quick. Upon entering Nova's orbit, we initiated contact with its space control. We received no acknowledgement. In hindsight, that was the moment we should have turned back to Earth. Since we didn't know what awaited us, we exercised patience, hoping for a reply. Hours drifted by, marked only by our persistent yet fruitless attempts to break through the eerie quiet that enveloped Nova. With little choice left, eventually we made a collective decision to proceed with an unauthorized landing. The once barren planet was now thriving in vegetation. Sky-high trees stood fencing our landing base. As we descended, we noticed a stark lack of human activity, which was in line with the silent space control. The stillness had connotations which we had yet to decipher. Without wasting time, we cocked our weapons and deboarded. We knew that without security clearance, our access to the base was restrained. Doors were locked shut, and no one would let us in. We wandered for a while, growing increasingly frustrated, until our search led us to a rover. Setting out in the rover, we circled the domes of the base, our hopes pinned on discovering an entry point. Eventually, our quest brought us to a building with shattered glass doors, the shards ominously pointing inwards, hinting at a forced entry. We entered in a defense formation, turning vacant corridors. We couldn't shake off the feeling that something was eerily amiss. Our worst fears were confirmed when we came across a pool of bubbly goo. 5 violently slashed bodies lay in a pile, disintegrating into liquid. There was a stretched interval of silence during which we allowed the visuals to sink in. "We need to report this to Earth," Commander Andrew spoke at last. We didn't know the nature of our adversary. We didn't know what events led to this. We decided it best to retreat to our ship, whereupon Commander sent out a distress signal to Earth. He spent a good hour inside the cockpit deliberating with the Earth base. When he finally emerged, he felt deranged and focused all the same. It was hard to guess what ran through his mind. "We have to retrieve a black box from the ship." He issued the verdict while staring at us as if somehow we were the cause to what had transpired. "Now, whatever has occurred in the domes is none of our business. I have been restricted from discussing it with you. What I can tell you is that the sooner we can get this done, the sooner we can get the hell out." Although the crew held reservations but had no option but to follow the commands, pushing aside the disturbing scenes we had encountered at the base, we set course for the spacecraft's crash site. In no time we were landing in the jungle. Dalton and I were the first ones to step out. The coordinates indicated a separation of 2 miles between us and the spacecraft. We marched, wading through unkempt bushes, hoping to stay unnoticed by the unknown elements of the planet. We were quick to reach the crash, but luck would accompany us only so far. What occurred next unfolded in a mere heartbeat. A flurry of movements materialized behind us. A blood-curdling scream pierced the air. I turned back and saw Steve being ruthlessly dragged by an otherworldly beast. Its hide, a grotesque masterpiece of natural artistry, camouflaged seamlessly with the earthly hues of its surroundings, making it impossible to comprehend its anatomy. We reacted instinctively, unleashing a barrage of gunfire, but it was a futile struggle. The creature's swiftness defied our desperate reflexes. Within moments, it vanished into the vegetation, spiriting Steve away from our horrified gazes. His anguished screams echoed. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the clamor ceased, leaving behind a haunting and oppressive silence that bore witness to the unfathomable event that had just unfolded. There was no time to chase or mourn. The unmanned ship, a spherical structure standing at 6 feet tall and stretching a foreboding 20 feet in length, was within our sight. Its interior had caved in, a stark testament to its traumatic nosedive from the heavens. Its entrance was stubbornly sealed by a steel barrier. Dalton held the plasma gun, slicing through the impenetrable door while we stood guard. Once the door was cut open, Andrew, Dalton, and Josh stepped in the ship. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were under surveillance. I had only begun negotiating with my thoughts when a black feline creature quietly emerged from the trees at a distance. Its eyes glowed with a ghostly intelligence as it inched towards Ralph and I, sizing us up for attack. Its ears were pointed and perked forward. Its teeth were razor-sharp and gleaming in the daylight. Despite its fierce appearance, it moved with a fluid grace, its movements almost hypnotic as it so openly expressed its intent to annihilate us. A slush of green and brown emerged on its body, instantly blending with the lush foliage around it. The transformation was swift, leaving my sight muddled. I opened fire in panic as I realized it was leaping our way. It got struck with my bullets, compelling it to turn back, but not before it had taken a swipe at Ralph. Hearing the gunfires, our team ran out of the ship just in time to experience the horror. "What the heck was that?" Commander Andrew bellowed, but we were as clueless as he was. It was perhaps in our best interest not to dwell in a guess game and leave at the earliest. The team had extracted the asset, a black cube about 18 inches each side. Its smooth, glossy surface had no visible indicators of its purpose. Surprisingly heavy, it poised a high-tech feel. Ralph had endured a few gashes in his left calf, a bit of blood running down his ankle. Though he got up in no time, I noticed a tremble in his gait. He had barely taken a few steps when his breaths grew shallow. He began convulsing on the ground. We watched in terror as his flesh began to melt. Within eye blinks, his screams turned into gurgles as his body thawed into a toxic stew. In unison, we sprinted in our ship's direction. A sense of being hunted was now metastasizing upon us. Every rustling leaf, every snapping branch was a gothic reminder of death lurking behind us. I could now see our ship in the distance, glinting in the sunlight. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I pushed myself even faster, outpacing my team by quite a distance. A chaotic rumble was building up behind, howls and crying wails. The ship was now just a few feet away. "Hold up, Ronnie," I heard someone call from behind, but I wasn't going to hold up. Leaping through the ship's entrance, I fled to the cockpit and initiated the takeoff. There was no time to check on anyone's welfare. Behind me, the jungle began resonating with fire zaps and screams of my comrades. The ship's door was still ajar as it lifted in the air. A swarm of feral aliens converged at a spot where I assumed my comrades stood their last frontier. As I stared out at the receding planet, my heart heavy with the weight of unknown, I finally came to terms with the truth. I had abandoned my team. I was not in possession of the cube. My mind grappled with the harsh reality of the situation, the enormity of the mystery that lay below. The cube, the planet, the deaths, everything seemed distant and unreal. I stared at the space enveloping the planet, a vast canvas bristling with stars, each one a question mark in the void. I set my course to Earth and walked over to my cryogenic sleep chamber. If anything, I was now convinced that people who sent us on this mission knew what awaited us. They knew a lot. I wondered if they were going to send another team to retrieve the black box. But that was a worry for another day. I looked around at the empty ship and wondered if this could have been any different. Perhaps not.